If you were trying to walk through the orchards of Sunnyvale in the 1950s, you could have walked for miles. Greetings from Sunnyvale, California. Sunnyvale, a small city with a big history. A city with a rich agricultural and industrial past, made even richer by the advances of science and technology. But Sunnyvale did not become the city that it is today by accident. There were people, companies, and events that changed the course of the city's history. We'd like to take you on a short journey that will introduce you to the people, places, and events that created and then molded the city of Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale is a modern, high-technology city. It's hard to imagine the city as it was 100 years ago, but there are many opportunities to learn about the city's past. You can get a feel for some of the city's history by walking through an orchard. You could take Deborah Olson's guided tour through some of the last remaining cherry orchards in the city.
Cherries to Martha Stewart's of the world and kind of Julia Child. You put some more water in here just in case it gets really hot here in another week or so.
These tours serve to remind us of a simpler past, a time when things moved more slowly, when almost everyone in the city knew everyone else, and when growing and picking fruit was big business. These few acres, along with a few more, are all that remains of Sunnyvale's rich agricultural past. You might be left with the impression that there is not much remaining from Sunnyvale's history. But if you take the time to slow down and look closely, you will be surprised. Not far from the tour is Orchard Heritage Park, where you'll find an interpretive exhibit showing how the people of Sunnyvale lived and how they farmed this land. Next door is Sunnyvale's Heritage Park Museum, where you can view exhibits and artifacts depicting our early pioneers and the city's agricultural and manufacturing past. And if you know where to look, you can learn quite a bit about Sunnyvale's history just by driving down the street. If you happen to find yourself on Matilda, sooner or later you would drive past the former home of the Zarko family. The Zarko home looks pretty much the way it did in the 1950s. Here are Pete and Ann Zarko with their son David. When Pete wasn't working at his garage, he liked to shoot a roll or two of film, or, in this case, have one of his friends operate the camera for him. Luckily for us, Pete Zarko shot a lot of film. One day, Pete Zarko went to the top of a tower in Sunnyvale and captured the way the city looked in the early 1950s. We know that Pete Zarko shot this film. That's his foot in the bottom of the picture. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. How much history can you really see when you walk or drive around our modern city? To help you find the history, we'll go back in time about 100 years, where it all began. This was the home of Martin Murphy Jr. and Mary Murphy, quite possibly the most important family in Sunnyvale's early history. The home was called the Bay View, since in those days it had an unobstructed view of the bay. The Murphy family came to California as part of the Stevens-Townsend-Murphy Party, which crossed the Sierra Nevada before the ill-fated Donner Party. Settling first in Sacramento, the Murphy family later moved to the area of Santa Clara Valley known as Rancho Pastoria de las Borregas, which is what Sunnyvale was then called, to avoid the greed and lawlessness of the gold rush and to be closer to Murphy's father and brothers, who also lived in the Santa Clara Valley. This is Murphy Park today, the former site of the Murphy home. The home is long gone now, but Sunnyvale's modern story begins here. In 1861, Martin Murphy Jr. allowed the San Francisco and San Jose Railroad to build a rail line directly through his property. In those times, it was possible for a single rancher to own as much as 8,000 or 9,000 acres of land. By the 1870s, a new county property tax sped the breakup of the large family-owned ranches, forcing ranchers to sell off their property in smaller parcels. One of the locals who would benefit from the breakup of the large ranches was San Jose realtor Walter Crossman, who bought 200 acres from the Murphy family. Crossman, who was quite enterprising and had plans to create a city of destiny, took out an ad in area newspapers offering a free train ride to Sunnyvale. He wanted people to see what a great city it was for agriculture, business, or for raising a family. And people took notice. Many Bay Area residents took the offer and rode the free train to look at the land, including Hannah and Carl Olson, who quickly determined that the area was perfect for growing and selling cherries and other crops. At the time, most residents still called the town Encinal, which meant where the live oak grows. Crossman tried to rename the town Murphy. When it was discovered that both Encinal and Murphy were already taken by other California cities, residents agreed on the more generic name of Sunnyvale. Sunny for the great weather, and Vale, which means wide river valley. Crossman's promotion of the city and his free train rides attracted many new businesses to Sunnyvale. The Jubilee Incubator Company was one of the first and one of the most famous. They manufactured incubators for eggs, and it was said at the time that a Jubilee trademark on poultry equipment was the same as sterling on silver. Cheap land, abundant water, low labor costs, and easy access to San Francisco were enough to entice the owners of Jubilee to move from Oakland to Sunnyvale in 1907. With a workforce of over 300, they set up shop at the southeast corner of Evelyn and Sunnyvale Avenues, near the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks. The company failed during the Great Depression, and this piece of our history survives only in photographs and artifacts on display at the Historical Museum. Occasionally, a failed factory will get a second chance. The Bowser Corporation took over the Jubilee building in the 1950s. With the original building long since gone, the site is now a condominium complex. In Sunnyvale, change is nonstop. Many long-term residents will tell you that they barely recognize the city at all. They remember it as a little town.
I first started at 42, there was approximately 3,200 people. And it always grew in the summer because we had the transients that came in to cut the fruit and work the canneries. And they had a general delivery window. And I knew all the people that came there. And you knew everyone because it was so small, you know. And when I left, there were over 300 people working the post office. And that was a lot of people. When I retired in 1980, I believe the population of Sunnyvale was approximately over 100,000 people.
My folks, after they were here at Sunnyvale a couple of years, wanted to go back into business because after they were in business in Michigan. So they opened a store in the middle of the block of Murphy. They rented. It was right next to the theater. Folks knew there'd be a demand for work clothing because that's all they worked in the cannery. They saw what the ladies there needed work clothing. So they would go to San Francisco, buy the clothing, bring it to Sunnyvale, put it in the store and sell it. And they're successful right off the bat.
To come to a little town of around 3,000 people, that was quite a culture shock. And to walk down the street with my little brother that was 9 years old, we used to go to Murphy Street, which was the heart of Sunnyvale, and say hello to everybody that we went by. My brother would say, "Do you know them?" I say, "No, I don't know them, but you say hello to everybody because we're new here."
I've always loved Sunnyvale because, to me, it's still like a small town, even though it has, what, 100 and, I don't know how many, 100,000, over 100,000 people. But it's still like a small town to me, and I remember it the way it used to be.
I live on Roosevelt Avenue. That's where I was born, and I still live there, which is very unusual that people tell me that. Also, growing up in Sunnyvale was so different at that time. There was a lot of open fields, empty lots, and we used to play football. Yeah, I played football and baseball, marbles, and then in the summertime we would play at night, you know, like kick the can and stuff like that. There was a lot of room for us to grow up in.
I came to Sunnyvale as a new bride, 18 years old. Yeah, my husband was working at the Shuckles Cannery at the time. Got 50 cents an hour, and that was considered enough to get married on.
Naturally, businesses that supported the agricultural industry began to set up shop in Sunnyvale. The Woolridge Manufacturing Company produced heavy farming equipment such as scrapers and rototillers. Another manufacturer who was lured to Sunnyvale with the promise of some very favorable land terms was the Joshua Hendy Iron Works. The Hendy plant relocated from San Francisco to Sunnyvale after losing their original plant in the 1906 earthquake. The Hendy plant would later play a major role in Sunnyvale history, beginning with World War II.